Hello students, greetings. I am Dr. Senthamare, Department of English, Vistas. Welcome to the online program offered by Vistas. The subject we have been discussing all these while is literary forms. We are in week 1, lecture 5. In this lecture, we will be talking on poetic devices and figurative languages. It's certainly with the use of figurative languages. In this lecture, we will discuss what makes a poem impressive with a lasting effect. Of course, it's certainly possible with the use of figurative language or literary devices. So what is the definition of literary device or figurative language? The poetic device or literary device refers to anything that is used by a poet, including sounds, shapes, rhythms, phrases and words, to enhance the literal meaning of the poem. So what do you mean by, do we mean to say that the poet cannot compose a poem without this? Yes. Even if he tries to write something, it won't be a poem or as if, but it would probably end up in writing a prose, because poem actually carries emotions. As we discussed in the very first slide, poetry is a spontaneous overflow of the powerful feelings. Alright. So when we express our feelings and emotions, so what we do is, when we express our emotions and feelings, ideas through poem, it is important to express it through shapes and rhythms, for it actually has a enhanced understanding. Alright. So figurative language is a way of expressing oneself that does not use a word's strict or realistic meaning, which means to say it is not exactly the literal meaning of it. Alright. It has a connotative meaning, which means to say the tone or the word. Word sometimes may have double meaning in the sense like literal meaning and contextual meaning. Alright. So the term poetic device refers to any non-language devices such as sounds, shapes, rhythms, phrases and sometimes words to enhance the literal meaning of the poem. Figurative language is a way of expressing oneself that does not use the word's strict or realistic meaning. It actually gives or tries to give a connotative meaning. Let's see what is that. What's the purpose? Why do we have to use? Do we have to use it at all? Poetic devices are tools that a poet can use to create rhythm, to enhance a poem's meaning or to intensify the mood or feeling. These devices help piece the poem put together, much like a hammer and nails join planks of wood together. The sense like when we add, it's actually kind of adding extra essence to what is already existing, so as to make it more effective. That's probably the very best way to explain. Poetic devices are techniques, elements such as rhythm, meter, techniques like repetition, alliteration and images used by poets to create a specific mood. So what are the common figurative speeches that we have? First is alliteration, anaphora, invitable, antithesis, apostrophe, assonance, hyperbole, irony, metonymy, onomatopoeia, paradox, personification, pun, simile, synecdoche and understatement. We will see, it's not, we may not discuss everything, but let's focus on few repeatedly used devices. First one I have taken is simile. I am going to compare simile with metaphor. It's actually easy to see the difference. So what is a simile? It's comparing two unlike things or unlikely things, incomparable things, using the words like as and. Example, life is like a box of chocolates. Life is different, chocolates is different. Chocolates is nothing but sweet, but as such life is not always sweet. Perhaps the poet's life was always sweet, or the character in the poem feels that life is very sweet. Perhaps the poet has faced something, encountered somebody which makes his life more meaningful and sweet, and that's the expression of the mood. Life is like a box of chocolates. So chocolates is different, life is different. But what is a common quality here which makes them together, which makes them similar, is the sweetness. The girl is as beautiful as a rose. Rose is different, it is totally different. And girl is different. How could we compare a girl to a rose? There is one common quality, beauty. Alright. The willow is like an etching, same thing. Alright. And what is the quality? Again, metaphor. A comparison of two unlike things without using the words like or as. See the first one, unlike things, like with the use of like and as. This is without that. My father is a tall, sturdy oak. The hotel is diamond in the sky. Who knows if the moon is a balloon? For example, how do we know? We come to know, or the readers come to know, that the father of the narrator is a tall, lean person. How do you understand? Sturdy oak. If you can imagine the oak tree, then you will be able to see it. The hotel is a diamond in the sky. And the hotel is very different and diamond is very different. So he compares probably the goodness of both or the preciousness of both. Who knows if the moon is a balloon? Perhaps the shape of it. So there is one common quality to compare these two unlikely things. And then is the figures of speech through imagery. What do you mean by imagery? Why is it important? Actually speaking, imagery is one very, very important device which helps the reader to visualize, imagine in their mental space. Right? When I read or when you read, what do? We create a mental space. Okay, and we create a mental space using the colors or using the action. How does it happen? Through the appropriate diction. And what do you mean by diction? Appropriate words. So describing words actually puts more effort, So describing words or the words that are used to describe the particular scene helps the reader to enhance the understanding. So figures of speech are vivid descriptions used to produce mental images in the mental space. We all create a mental space when we read. Alright, so that's the imagery. Let's move on to the next one. Personification. What do you mean by personification? Giving human qualities to non-human objects. For example, animal, object or idea. So these are all non-human objects, but we give them human qualities. Examples, hunger sat shivering on the road. How could you expect a hunger? Hunger is not a person. Hunger is not an animal. Hunger is only a feeling. Right? So hunger is sitting, which means to say the poet describes that there is someone. It can be he or she. It can be his own person. Anybody who is close to him. Hunger sat shivering on the road, which means to say there is somebody who is shivering or someone is shivering out of hunger. So the extreme level of hunger is described through this particular line. The flowers danced on the lawn. Lawn doesn't dance, but the flowers looks like dancing because of the strong wind or nice wind or blowing wind or something like that. Hyperbole is an exaggerated statement used to make a point. It's actually speaking, in other words, it's called overstatement. An apple doesn't keep the doctor away. An apple is not enough for anyone to live. But it is important to have an apple at least. So that's the point to make. I could sleep for a year. Who could sleep for a year? Even Bima doesn't sleep for a year. He sleeps only 6 months a year. So which means to say the person is sleep deprived and he wants to sleep more and more. Alright. Same with the next statement. This book weighs a ton. A book doesn't weigh a ton. Perhaps he talks about the context or the content of the book, which means to say it's very heavy or complex to understand. So that's a meaning. It's actually called overstatement. So moving on to the next few, Nomotopia. It's about sounds, repetition, alliteration, assonance is all about sounds. The bang of a gun, the hiss of a snake, the buzz of a bee, the pop of a firecracker. Well, while listening to these words, the sounds of these words actually creates a mental imagination in the reader about the sound, as if it is really happening, as if the gun is banging. Same with the repetition. Sing a song full of faith, sing a song of the hope. The sing a song is again a repetition to create an impact in the readers. Rhyme scheme. It's actually a pattern of the end rhyme in a poem. The last syllable, the last syllable is the rhyme. I looked at the shell in the ocean. I noticed the smell and the motion. Look at the first and the third. Ocean, motion is AA. I looked at the bell in the sea. I noticed the smell, very peculiar to me. So C and me or BB. So this is actually called a rhyme scheme. Certain poets follow a rhyme scheme, certain poets ignore the rhyme scheme. As I said, poet is the creator. He has the poetic liberty of doing anything he wants. Assonance, what is it all about assonance? It's again a beginning, middle, end, starts with the same sound pattern. present a, flesh a, extending a, medicine a. So if you read in a sentence, you will have the repeated sound in all the places. So it's actually called assonance. Moving on to the next one. Alliteration. It's about the beginning. It's like the frog frolicked frivolously on the forest floor. Look at the FFFF. Alright, so this is one example. And consonants sounds, the middle, beginning and the end. Sha, wish, cushion, quash, the shall sound. And so this is all about the poetic devices. I think we talked about what is the epic, ballad, and then certain poetic devices like rhyme scheme, meter, alliteration, consonants, and etc. Alright, so we will move on to the recap of what we have seen so far. Alright, so the first few lectures we talked about the forms of literature or the literary forms. We discussed about prose, poem, novel, the major genres of four and then subgenres. And then we talked about what is subjective poetry and narrative poetry. And then in this lecture we talked about poetic devices. So what's the difference between subjective and narrative poetry? Subjective poetry is written from the perspective of the poet. I write my own experience becomes subjective poetry. And narrative poetry, I write through somebody about somebody. Alright. But what's the first person narration? When I write as I, the person who narrates is called the first person. I never bring in any name or I never bring in any he or she. The third third question, just to recap. My love is a red, red rose. It talks about the poetic devices. We have got four and it's simile. And then snow speaks to the people. It's falling above in a glooming sunlight. It's white, a sparkling voice echoes as it falls through the air. Snow doesn't speak to people. It's inanimate. It's an object. Is it an object? Maybe, yeah. But it doesn't speak, but it's described as if it speaks. So it's actually a... And then what happens is next is brain was a ball bouncing every tennis ball back over the net. So what is compared here? Brain is compared to the ball. It's a metaphor. Alright. So this is all about literary forms, and I hope you all understood literary forms and its types and the literary devices. Happy learning. Keep in touch. We will meet later. Thank you.